you talk about, you say when there are less people making use of the electricity, whose fault is that?
Now, fantastic question. The fault is, when I say people, I want you to understand it. I don't want you to understand it to mean individual human beings, because those people, the individual human beings, they actually need the electricity. But you could have a situation where the distribution company, which is the third leg of the value chain, may not be able to pick, their facilities may not be available to pick, to provide electricity to the people at the other end.
Now we'll begin today's conversation taking our quote from Terence Spike Milligan, British-Irish actor, comedian, writer, musician, poet, and playwright. He once said, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light. But the electricity board said he would have to wait until Thursday to be connected." Sounds more like what we are experiencing here in Nigeria. All right, let's take our second quote, and this one is from Deborah Harland, an American politician serving as the 54th United States Secretary of the Interior, a member of the Democratic Party, once said, "There is no justifiable reason why our electricity, heating and cooling, and transportation needs aren't powered by 100% renewable energy." Okay, so let's take our last quote. And this one is from Alicia Debnam Carey, an Australian actress. She once said, "Once electricity and petrol and facilities and food stop, society stops. It's crazy." I quite agree with her on this one. Now let's see how this quote relates to what we will be discussing today. Warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, power generation companies, GENCOs, under the Association of Power Generation Companies, APGC, said that the power supply situation in the country was worsening because they were owed over 1.6 trillion naira since 2013. APGC's Executive Secretary, Dr. Joy Ogaji, in a briefing in Abuja, argued that a situation where the energy dispatched by the power generators was used as an index for power generation capacity was detrimental to their survival. In the past couple of weeks, the already bad power supply situation in the country had worsened as players in the sector continued to trade blames as to whose table the buck stops. Now, meanwhile, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, has responded to concerns on rising electricity tariff in Nigeria, stating that electricity tariff would rise every 6 months to adjust to foreign exchange and inflation requirements. This was disclosed by Mr. Sanusi Garba, the chairman of NERC here in Abuja. Now, the Commission also added that the grid failure last week was as a result of the trip-off caused by the conductor snap, which started from the 330 kilovolt amp from the Benin axis, and also vandalism of pipelines that also supply gas to the power plants. So, as the operators and the government agencies continue to bicker how power supply has continued to remain abysmally low in the past few weeks, as checks show that the national grid supply at the time of the collapse was just 1,393.40 megawatts, with only 9 plants generating to the grid. Now, what is the state of electricity supply in your neighborhood, especially at a time where the country is suffering from different kinds of scarcity? You talk of electricity scarcity, PMS scarcity, diesel scarcity, quality education scarcity, aviation fuel scarcity, water scarcity, and like I said, even diesel has just joined the race. I guess Nigerians are survivors, just like they say, God deal, we go survive. But then, on the other side, have you ever tried asking questions to find out the reason behind this habitual hydra-headed challenge and what exactly is the way forward? Well, that's the big issue on today's show, and we're just about to hit the ground running on this conversation tonight. Stay tuned. Glad to have you back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, we have our guest here. He is Oyebode Fadipe. He is a power sector consultant. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you. All right, we have joining us via Skype from the UK is Nick Agule. He is an energy expert. Hello, Mr. Nick.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. All right, let's get down to business. But we'll start with you, Mr. Fadipe. Now, earlier in the week, we got the report that the national grid collapsed twice, at least for 48 hours, leading to a nationwide blackout. That's actually not the first time that Nigerians will hear that there's a collapse with the national grid. In fact, we seem to have been used to it. So what exactly is the reason for this recurring incident?
Well, put in a very simple form, it only shows that the grid is weak and that the grid can respond at the slightest provocation to system disturbances that may arise as a result of a multitude of factors. For instance, for the last one that happened, as you have quoted, managers of the system told us that it was as a result of vandalism, the 330 kV line having some problems in Edo State and all of those kind of things. One would have expected that by now our power sector will be such that it can withstand even hurricane situations. But we don't have that kind of thing. I'm told that there is a joke on the streets today that Russia has been bombing Ukraine for close to a week or 2 weeks, yet there has not been interruption of power supply, let alone Nigeria that is not at war. Of course, if I cannot confirm that one, I can tell you about the one that occurs here. At the slightest change of color in the sky, supply goes up, and people have asked me, is it that electricity is afraid of rain or things like that?
Or heat.
Or yes, you know, so clearly our grid is weak, and we have not done something substantial to enable it withstand any kind of disturbance in the last 10 years, especially since privatization. We have not. I can't see anything substantial that we have done in terms of this grid.
Well, this is really embarrassing, especially for a country, Nigeria. Now, saying that the Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, has announced that the national grid has been restored, but then a lot of people are still complaining of total blackout. Personally, I know of some people who have not even seen electricity since 11th of March up till today. What exactly could be the reason for this then?
Well, I'm also wondering whether we are not in what I would call official speak. I mean, restoring the grid is one thing, but ability to pick load is another thing. There could be power in the grid, maybe even up to the transformer, but the distribution sector is not allowed to pick load, because the moment they pick load, the little stability they have will be lost. So it's like somebody you have discharged from the hospital but cannot engage in physical activities. You know, there is a difference between discharge and recovery period when somebody falls sick. So I think what is happening is that, yes, the grid may have been recovered, but the grid cannot take too much load for now, because any attempt to put more load on it will take it back to the position of a collapse again. So I confirm the fact that there are quite a number of customers, because I spoke with a customer today, and that customer sadly said she had not had electricity for 8 unbroken days in FCT. I mean, we're talking about the Federal Capital Territory, not just the Federal Capital Territory, but even the city center, Abuja, for 8 unbroken days that she has not had electricity supply.
Not even for 1 minute.
Not even for 1 minute. That 8 unbroken days. I mean, she was so sad about it, and I felt quite sad as well that we could be having such a situation in the city center. It's quite sad.
Now I hear you talk about if there's too much load or more load on the national grid, it won't still work. What exactly is too much load? Now,
again, let's look at it from this perspective. The frequency operation of Nigeria is at 50 Hz. I mean, that's a bit of a technical language. But what it means is that we must not go above that 50 points.
Okay.
Now, if we go below it, the system can collapse. If we go above it, the system can collapse. So when we go below it, or put in another form, there are, of all the reasons, there are 2 of them that are very clear that can make a system collapse.
Okay.
Either too many people are chasing the little load that is available.
Okay.
Or less people are available to take the load that is available. So you could have a situation where you have 5,000 megawatts in the grid, but there are not enough people to take the 5,000 megawatts. The system will respond to that inadequate demand.
Okay.
And then you could have 3,000 megawatts in the grid, and more people are demanding for it. They are pulling, everybody pulling left, right, and center. The system will also respond to that kind of excess
overload.
Demand.
Okay.
So the overload is when there is so much, I mean, for want of a better word, when there is so much, but the less number of people that are asking for it. The system will always repress. So there must be that equilibrium position where what is generated is consumed by the number of people that should consume that amount of energy at the same time. So even if there is a plus, the plus will be maybe +1, +2, and within the twinkle of an eye, it goes back to that 50 Hz at any point in time. And if there's a drop, the drop will be -1 or -2, that's 49 or 48, and it will return back at the twinkle of an eye to that same 50 Hz. That same 50 Hz must be maintained constantly, otherwise there's likely to be a problem in the grid.
Okay, so before we go to Mr. Nick Agule, I hear you talk about, you say when there are less people making use of the electricity. Whose fault is that?
Now, fantastic question. The fault is, when I say people, I want you to understand it. I don't want you to understand it to mean individual human beings, because those people, the individual human beings, they actually need the electricity. But you could have a situation where the distribution company, which is the third leg of the value chain, may not be able to pick, their facilities may not be available to provide electricity to the people at the other end. So take you and I, for instance, we belong to a particular distribution company. For the purpose of this analysis, we take supply from Abuja Electricity. If the transformer that is serving us is not made available to give us electricity, we cannot receive electricity from it. So if there are bulk locations like that are not taking load from the transmission member of the value chain, then it will affect whatever generation is doing. Yes. So it is a synchronized system. No part of the system must be lagging behind at any point in time. The 3 of them must be running simultaneously, because as electricity cannot be stored. As it is generated, it is consumed.
Okay.
That's the situation with electricity.
All right, we'll come back to that now. Let's go to Mr. Nick Agule. Now, according to the Association of Power Generation Companies, APGC, one of the reasons they gave was the power plants are down and insufficient management of the grid, due to insufficient management of the grid, because they are currently owed 1.644 trillion naira since 2013, since privatization, and they have exhausted all their borrowing sources, as the Central Bank of Nigeria had reportedly warned banks to desist from lending money to them. Now, could this be a possible or tangible, I'm trying to look for the right word now, could this be a tangible reason why a lot of people, sitters across the country, even the FCT, who pay for supply of these services, are yet to get the electricity they pay for?
Thank you very much for that question. Before I say anything in this conversation, I want to draw our viewers' attention to a statistic that will probably shock a lot of people. And I think it's based on that statistics that we can have this discussion going forward.
Okay.
I am speaking to you now from London in the United Kingdom, just a mile or so away from the Heathrow Airport. Every day, the United Kingdom supplies, Nigeria likes to call electricity in megawatts, but I will call them in gigawatts. So I will take away the thousands. Because as my co-panelist is talking about 3,000 megawatts, that is 3 gigawatts. So I will be speaking in gigawatts, okay? Every day, the UK supplies 730 gigawatts of electricity to an economy of 65 million people. And Nigeria, an economy of 200 million people, we're talking 3. 1, 2, 3. We're not even talking 30. Compare 730 to 3. So this is the quantum of electricity deficit that we're talking about in Nigeria. By global standards, we're expected to supply 1 gigawatt to 1 million people. So as Nigeria is 200 million people in population, the minimum electricity that will carry the economy and make the economy vibrant and grow and poverty is eliminated should be 2,000 megawatts. That's all. 200 megawatts. We need to be supplying Nigeria with 200 megawatts. And we're talking about 3. And then this 3 is not there. Continues to go down, as my co-panelist said, even Thunderstrike takes down the national grid. So this is the basis for this conversation. Now, in answer to your question, I don't think that the money that the federal government is owing the generating companies is the real issue. I think that is an ancillary issue. It's a side issue. First and foremost, the federal government shouldn't be paying for power. Consumers should be paying for their power. The federal government doesn't pay for telephones for us. For our telephones, both voice and data. So that we're even talking about the federal government, paying generating companies for power that is being generated and is not being utilized. Alone in itself is a big issue. But the real issue that is affecting Nigeria's electricity supply is that the government has refused to let this sector into the private sector. That is the real issue. Let me tell you something. When I was growing up, we used to see on TV NITE officials. NITE was the monopoly Nigerian telecommunications company. Just as these electricity players are trading blames, that is how NITE officials used to come to TV and continue giving us series of reasons why Nigeria cannot get telephones. In fact, a minister of communications in those days even came on TV to say, look, a phone is not for the poor. These excuses were happening when government was sinking money into telecoms, into this NITE, a giant hole. The moment Nigeria took the decision to hand over telecoms into the private sector, stepped in the MTNs and the Airtels and all of that, Nigeria telephone supply from 500,000 lines has grown to about 200 million lines as we speak today. And from 1994 that was costing 100,000 naira 25 years ago, now you can go and buy a SIM card. In fact, you may even get a SIM card for free. This is what happens when government sends a sector into the private sector. I mean, sends a key aspect of our economy to the private sector. What is happening in electricity is that, yes, the government has privatized the GENCOs, but the government is sitting on transmission. The GENCOs cannot generate more than transmission can carry. And the DISCOs that have also been privatized cannot distribute what transmission has not given them. So a government is sitting on transmission, creating a bottleneck, strangulating the sector, and this government does not have money to expand that transmission sector. A government that is borrowing for subsidies, borrowing to pay salaries, how would they have money to invest billions of dollars to expand the transmission? So that is the real issue. So to solve this problem is for government to just step aside as a player in this sector and be a regulator, just like is happening in telecoms, and allow the private sector to come in and supply electricity to Nigerians. This is just the solution to this thing. And until we take this solution, we're not going to have electricity. And I can assure you, electricity is the lifeblood of every economy in this fifth industrial revolution.
All right, Mr. Nick Agule, you've said quite a lot. We'll go back to the solution. But then looking at the fact that, according to the federal government, they said that why we are where we are today also, even Mr. Fadipe also mentioned that is because of the increasing vandalization of pipelines that also supply gas to the power plant. So how much impact does that have in all of this, especially, or how much impact has it got to do with low electricity supply?
It's going to have an impact because I think the energy mix of Nigeria as of today is 70% thermal. So 70% of the electricity is coming from thermal stations that are fed with gas. The balance 30% is coming from hydro. Yeah. So if there is vandalization of the pipelines that are feeding the stations with gas, the stations are going to shut down.
Okay.
Again, if there is low water level, then the hydro stations are going to experience low production. But the issue there is this: the vandalization of pipelines is something that can be arrested. If we talk about other areas, because if you go to a place like South Africa with a population of about 50 million thereabout, they are supplying 50 gigawatts to their economy. Why are they not complaining about vandalization of pipelines? Because the government is up to its duty. You don't have to put the pipelines on the surface, bury the pipelines in the ground. These days, there are technologies that are installed on pipelines such that immediately you start digging on top of that ground where a pipeline is buried, the control station already knows that there is digging. And then the security agencies respond immediately to that place. If people know that is going to happen, then they won't go and vandalize pipelines. They will look for something else to do. So it's about government providing security for the pipelines.
Okay.
It shouldn't be an excuse.
All right, then, let's come to you, Mr. Fadipe. Now, according to checks, it was observed that the national grid produced about 5,340 megawatts of electricity in 2020. And now in 2022, it was reduced to 2,000 megawatts of electricity. So what exactly has gone wrong in the last 2 years?
First of all, let me commend the gentleman at the other end. He has spoken brilliantly. But I just want to make one or two comments before I get back to your question.
Okay.
I think very strongly that rather than call it government, I think the biggest problem we have in this country is the Nigerian people.
Ah. How so?
Fine. He said, I mean, from his, let me use this last response. Okay, there's technology, use the technology. As soon as a vandal is trying to get into the system, somebody will know about it, the security people should stand up and go there. What is that? What happened to Abba Kyari? Abba Kyari was put in a position of trust, even though we are not judging because we are not a court of competent jurisdiction. But the facts available to the members of the public currently suggest that there may have been a compromise of somewhere. Position. How are we sure that even the security people are not the ones? With profound respect to all those ones who are ethical. How are we sure that we will not find security men who will be the ones that will even show the vandals the way? The biggest problem of this country is the Nigerian people themselves. And until and unless we change, whether you are in government or out of government, we will continue. Why is it that the same Nigerian, he gets into Heathrow Airport, he gets into Gatwick or any other airport in UK, and he behaves himself, he stands on the queue. But the moment he enters into the Nigerian space, even before the plane lands, he's already taking his luggage from the overhead compartment. And the moment he gets into Murtala Mohammed Airport, whether in Lagos or Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, he begins to show status. This is the same person. They say, I was, with all sense of humility, I was going to the US and I met a Nigerian minister sitting down in the airport without nobody around him. Nobody. We all sat down there waiting to be called to come on board. Nobody. But here in Nigeria, the policeman will kick you. The policeman is driving one way. He will kick you. You are the one on the right lane. He will kick you. He will flog you with horsewhip. He will detain you. This is the person that is supposed to keep the law. Coming back to your question, of course, it's inevitable. What has been our contribution to the grid? If 2 or 3 years ago we had 5,000 megawatts, and now it must mean that the machines that are available are beginning to go down.
Okay.
And they are not able to produce electricity again. One thing that generation is talking to, the Gencos are saying today is that, look, we had an agreement. There's a contractual agreement that you will pay for capacity and you will pay for energy. There are two ways by which billing composition is made in contractual relationship between the generating companies and the market. Is either you bill them on energy, is either they give you bill on energy alone, or they give you bill on energy and capacity. Now, what does the capacity mean? That bill for capacity means that anytime you want the energy, you can get it readily, which is a very sensible thing to do. But they will also tell you that, look, I have staff to pay. I need to maintain those machines so that the moment you call, it's like you sitting down here now and you say, okay, you keep a vehicle on charter. And then you tell the vehicle, you tell the vehicle owner, because I'm not using you now, I will not pay for that period that you are waiting for me. So, but you have entered into an agreement that whether I am moving or not, provided you are available to take me to my destination, I will pay you for an entire day. Then you have used him for about 3-4 months. You now said, for those 3-4 months, I didn't go out more than 10 times in a day. Excuse me.
What are we talking about? A lot of people.
Exactly. What are we talking about? So we don't even have respect for contract. Look at what is happening between ASU and federal government. Since 2009, they have been battling with one agreement. Oh, you did not respect it, we respected it. And children are losing wasting their time. They lost 1 year, they have started again. ASU has extended their strike by another 2 months. Parents don't know where to go to. ASU will hold everybody by the jugular, by the scrotal sack, with due respect. So we are in a country where people don't have respect for basic things. And unless and until we stand up to this challenge, I tell you the truth, 10 years time, we will sit down here and we'll be talking about this kind of thing in the power sector. Because 10 years ago or 9 years ago, those things that gave rise to the privatization, have we fulfilled any one of them? One of them is that this private sector driven power industry will become an alternative source of income or another stream of income to the government.
The government, yeah.
Number one. Two, which is even much more fundamental, is the fact that government will no longer fund the power sector. I ask you today, my Annabelle, is government not funding the power sector? Government, to the best of my knowledge, has funded the power sector up to about 1.5 or 1.6 trillion, and government is excited doing it. Getting money from central bank, getting money, providing collateral through, for them to take facility here and there. Number three, this private sector, power sector driven by the private sector is supposed to catalyze economic growth and development. Tell me where we are. I forwarded something to you on WhatsApp where a company in this Abuja complained bitterly about what they have spent on diesel. Bitterly. Look at that amount of money that they have spent on diesel.
And it's not the only one. I saw another one from Tony Elumelu of UBA Bank.
Can you imagine? And that is somebody who is even an investor in the power sector itself. He's an investor, and a major one for that matter. Number four, I think there is a fourth one. So what am I trying to say? If all of those lofty things that we look forward to at the point of privatization, we have not achieved them, I think by now, the only most reasonable thing to do is to go back and say, gentlemen, we are having problem. The only policy that has survived all kinds of somersault in this country is the NYSC policy. That's the only one that has survived since 1973 or so when it started. Why can't we go back to the drawing board and say we have not succeeded with this privatization in itself is not bad. It is the operators of the policy that are creating the problem.
All right, then. Now, according to the Dr. Joy Ogaji, that's APGC's executive secretary, she was quoted as saying that she explained that the huge debt was making it difficult for power generation companies to operate and maintain their plants, stressing that if the debts were paid, the GENCOs could generate 9,000 megawatts immediately. 9,000 megawatts immediately, Mr. Oyebode. Yes. Is that even possible for Nigeria? It looks like an unrealistic
the information at our disposal is that we even have up to 13,000 megawatts. With due respect to my colleague on the other side who is talking about gigawatts, okay? We have 13,000 megawatts that, capacity right now. But look, if you are owing them, here is somebody that you have told, if you study the trend of power generation since privatization, you will see that at the point of privatization, when the agreement was respected 100%, the generating companies were excited. They borrowed money, they plugged back the whatever excess they made from their investment, and then they ramped up generation. But after some time, government began to renege. There was supposed to be some $800 million that MBET was supposed to be using as a revolving fund. Okay. Now, what is the position of MBET? At the point of privatization, there was liquidity issue, and that liquidity issue has not been resolved till now, because that's a fundamental issue that the market is complaining about, that the market does not have money. So government, in its wisdom, which was reasonable, but not without its own challenges, because you will find out that one of the factors that you will see in our power sector is the single buyer model. What does that mean? MBET is our single buyer. This is common in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe. MBET is our single buyer. MBET buys from the generating companies.
Okay.
And then what does it do? It now allows the discos to be able to sell to customers who want it. How does it buy it? There is a tariff that at which electricity is sold, but that tariff is not sufficient to meet the cost of production, not to even talk about the profit or the markup. Now, the difference between what is recovered from the market. So let's do some arithmetic. The actual cost of electricity is 10 naira, but government has fixed it at, say, 3 naira, 5 naira, or 6 naira, as the case may be. That 4 naira difference, MBET now provides it to all the members of the value chain. Most of the time, this time around, generating companies, Gencos, as we call them. Now, this has accumulated over a period of time. That $800 million was an agreement that was reached when Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the current DG of World Trade Organization, was the Minister of Finance. And it was a brilliant thing. But after some time, said, look, we cannot continue to do this. And then that was when we started having this problem. So that fund is no longer available to be a revolving fund. And then the market is not able to provide the liquidity that will meet the cost of production. So
we actually have the ability or capability to generate up to 13,000 megawatts in Nigeria.
Yes. But
interesting.
What is the problem is when there is no gas, when there is no funds to pay the gas people, the capacity that is available becomes dormant. It cannot do anything. It cannot do anything because they won't be able to generate.
Well, our eyes are actually open to a lot of things. We're due for a break, so let's go on this quick break, and when we return, we'll expand this conversation a little bit further. Don't move a muscle.
About this whole thing that petrol, diesel, everything and all of that. And I would tell Nigerians something that will shock them. The NNPC is not being honest with Nigerians about the real cause of the scarcity of petrol in Nigeria, or petroleum products. The war in Ukraine is the real cause. Because the NNPC said, they brought in adulterated petrol, 100 million liters, which is just about 2 days of our consumption. So 2 days of consumption of adulterated petrol wouldn't cause scarcity over 1 month.
If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you missed quite a lot. But then you can still join in the conversation as we have Nick Agule. He is joining us via Skype there in the UK. And then we have here in the studio, in Abuja studio, we have Fadipe Oyebode. He is a power consultant, a power sector consultant, I beg your pardon. All right, we'll come to you, Nick Agule. Now, let's talk about fuel. Let's divert a little bit and talk about fuel. And then you talk about the aviation fuel to PMS, gas, diesel. And now for weeks, more than 8 weeks now, since the adulterated fuel was distributed to the market. Then they said that it has been recalled, but still the queues are getting longer every day with the black market boys everywhere, and then they're smiling to the banks, selling even right in front of the fuel stations. And yet Nigerians keep hearing that we have distributed XYZ amount of fuel, but then even with your money, you cannot buy fuel. What exactly could be the best explanation to this quagmire?
Thank you very much for that question. As someone who works in the oil and gas industry, I'm very well positioned to answer that question. But before I answer that question, I would just like to say a few things. My co-panelist, Mr. Fadipe, I think, yes, he made a very brilliant contribution. He actually asked a very vital question. And I think the answer to that question is what is going to solve Nigeria's problems, even beyond what we're talking about here.
Okay.
He said that, why is it that Nigerians will be behaving unruly in Lagos? Board the flight, and when they arrive in Heathrow Airport, which, like I said, is just a mile away from where I'm sitting, and they begin to behave well. The answer to that question is simple. It's the government. So as much as Mr. Fadipe thinks that it's not the government, it's the government, because let me tell him that those Nigerians arriving in Heathrow are behaving well because they know that if they misbehave as they do in Lagos, they will be in jail. And who is going to land them in jail? the government. And we talk about people like Abakari. Yes, we have policemen who are also in jail here in the UK. You understand? So police can arrest police. In fact, this gentleman that was killed in the US with a knee on his neck is why the police were killing him with their knee. Yes, why the police were killing him with their knee on his neck, citizens called the police on them. So the police came and arrested them. So the fact that we have the Abakaris is not a reason why the government shouldn't do its job. All of us in Nigeria have submitted our rights to the government. We have submitted our sovereignty as individuals to the government. And the government is the one that controls law and order. It will never happen, as Mr. Fadipe thinks, that one day Nigerians will wake up and say, we have misbehaved enough. Let us now do well, without something compelling them into that behavior. As I'm sitting here, if I drive out of my house, I won't go 100 meters, there's a traffic light. Even at midnight, people stop at that traffic light. Why? Because there's a camera on top of that traffic light. And you know that if you beat that traffic light, the ramifications of your action, they will come to your doorstep in a matter of days. That is what deters citizens. If this place I'm sitting at, the UK, the government is not up to its responsibility. The government is sleeping the way the Nigerian government is sleeping. I cannot tell you that UK will descend into anarchy. The only reason that people are behaving well here because they know there are consequences for their action. And those consequences are visited by the government. So let us never, ever try to discount the role of government in the affairs of men. And then Mr. Fadipe is quite happy that we have a 13,000 megawatts electricity capacity. But I just told him that the UK of 65 million people have 730,000 gigawatts. A father that is earning 730,000 naira per month, then another child whose father is earning 13,000 per month is being happy and proud of 13,000.
I'm not happy and proud.
I'm
not happy and proud about it at all. I only try to confirm.
South Africa of 50 million people is doing 50,000 gigawatts. You know, and then of course, Mr. Fadipe talks about the cost. Do you know that if I tell this thing to Nigerians, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will be very angry. Do you know that I'm paying far less for electricity here in London than Nigerians are paying in Nigeria? We buy gas. The UK buys gas from Nigeria. The NLNG supplies gas to the UK. They ship the gas, bring it to the UK, generate electricity, and sell electricity to me. My electricity bill per month is about 20, 30 pounds. Convert that, it's not even up to 20,000. And in this my house, I live with 5 women in this house, my wife and four daughters. They are all on their phones, fridge, freezer, washing machine, dishwasher, all sorts of gadgets, 24/7. Power never goes. And I'm paying less than what people are paying in Nigeria. All people are paying 50, 60, 100,000 for light they don't see. So it's a whole gamut of a black box. And this can only be unraveled.
Okay.
If the government lets this sector into the private sector, the private sector will take it up, they will invest in it, and then they will supply electricity to a willing market. Because everywhere you see, I was talking with one of the players in the industry, I think someone in the discourse, and he was saying, oh, the Nigerian market is not vibrant, there is no market. And I told her that everywhere you see a generator in Nigeria, that is a missed opportunity by the electricity players. Anywhere you see a generator, because they should be supplying the power that generator is actually supplying.
Okay.
So there's a huge market in Nigeria.
Okay.
But the inefficiencies are coming in because the government is still straddling the sector. When the government lets the sector out fully, 100% into the private sector, and government becomes a regulator, then what Mr. Fadipe said will happen. Instead of government pumping money into the electricity sector will now become a revenue item on the government's balance sheet, because then the electricity industry will be putting money into government coffers, as the telecoms are right now doing, instead of us spending on NITA.
Would come back to you. Now, Mr. Fadipe, now seeing that for days, especially for those now who are using prepaid meters. Now it has, with this blackout that they've been experiencing, like you said, someone has been experiencing blackout for 8 days throughout. Now, if for all of these days they didn't have electricity, it means that somehow there should be like a loss of revenue. So who exactly is suffering this from across the value chain? There should be a loss. Who suffers it more?
The entire value chain is losing, because for a product that I have not paid, that has not been supplied to me, I shouldn't be expected to pay for it. And I think it is for this kind of situation that customers have always agitated for prepaid meters, so that when the power goes off, the meter also stops functioning. And then when the power is restored, the meter can begin to count whatever energy that has been provided for that particular customer. Having said that, I think it's important, and I respect my colleagues' responses to the issues. I'm not satisfied that we have 13,000 megawatts in our country. I think United Nations standard is that it is 100,000 to every 1 million people. So if you do that arithmetic, we're supposed to be having up to about 200,000 megawatts of electricity to about 200 million people. And here we are not even up to 15,000. So I can never ever be satisfied with that. Number two is the fact that when I say government, when I say the people, the government is made up of the people. It is people from outside government that look for positions, as it were, maybe political offices, to form government and then to run the country. My thesis here is that as Nigerians, we are not being ruled we are not under colonialism. The government is not a colonial master, so that we don't look at they and we situation. This country belongs to Nigerians. And unless Nigerians themselves, my brother on the other side does not live here, we know some things that he doesn't know. And I'm sure I will agree. Just as he knows some things that I don't know about UK, there are things I know about Nigeria that he doesn't know. So I think he can concede to me when I say Nigerians, most of us, we're not being kind to this land. We are not kind to this land. Frankly, we are not. We take advantage of this. We take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us. It's not a good word to use on air, but we do things unthinkable to this country. Things that, what you will call patriotism, what somebody ordinarily will say out of patriotic considerations, I will not do this. Some Nigerians will say, to hell with patriotism, I will do this.
And damn the consequences.
And at the end of the day, we all suffer for it. Why? I agree that, yes, if government throws a lot of people in jail, but must all of us be in jail before we use our brains? Must all of us be in jail? Must we go to jail before we are sensible? Anyway, that's an aside. So, everybody loses in the value chain. Everybody is a loser if money is not there. And like I told you initially, liquidity continues to be one of the major points that is holding this sector down.
All right. Now, according to the Minister of Finance, who spoke about policy decision to stop electricity subsidies, she said, and quote, the subsidies have been at one time as high as 600 billion naira a year and gradually coming down to about 30 billion naira or so this year. So maybe that could be the explanations why Nigerians need to are paying 2 times, because recently we just noticed that you're paying 2 times of what you're paying for electricity. Now, if and when subsidy is removed on power, does that actually spell doom for the country? Is that a good thing?
No, I don't think it should spell doom, provided the subsidy that is the money that is generated from the removal of the subsidy, because what it means is that the Father Christmas, the Father Christmas is no longer there to distribute things freely, no more freebies, so people are paying for it, and what they pay for it should be used to develop it. I dare say that, yes, it may be painful when there is an increase, but when you get service for the money paid, you will feel some sense of satisfaction and say, yes, okay, it was expensive, but I got service.
It's worth it.
That is worth that amount. If I get home every day and I can pinch the wall, I can press my thumb on the wall and there is electricity. Do you know that electricity affects us emotionally? You are driving home and then maybe you are angry from wherever you are coming from, and you get to your neighborhood and there is power supply. You are a bit relaxed. But if as you are just driving in and you are angry and power supply, so, oh my God, what a hell is this?
And the first thing that comes to your mind is NEPA, not the PHCN.
I mean, I just told this television station about 2 or 3 days ago that people still, I mean, that name still resonates with even children born after born during privatization that didn't know anything about NEPA. And the moment supply, because they have been hearing, they are able to connect the two actions. They see that supply goes off and somebody says, oh, NEPA. And then supply comes back and says, oh, thank God, NEPA. They too will begin. So that name. So it must mean that there's something wrong with the now. And there's something preferred about the then. That people are still connecting with. And that's enough reason for us to go back and say, let's examine this privatization. That's enough reason.
All right, then let's come to you, Nick Agule. Now, let's talk about still on electricity. Some pundits have said that climate change, in fact, this period of heat that we are experiencing at the moment, is the reason for this continuous collapse of our national grid. Do you agree?
I think the answer is neither here or there, because my co-panelist, Mr. Fadipe, did an excellent analysis about the grid. Our grid is old. There has been no investment in it for a long time. Like I said, the government privatized the two ends of the power value chain, the GENCOs and the DISCOs. And the government is still holding on to the grid, which is in the middle. And this government does not have money. We know this is a government that does not have money because this government is just borrowing. Now, with an old grid that has not been rejuvenated, that has not experienced any investment, anytime the GENCOs try to increase generation, it collapses the grid. Anytime generation goes down, it collapses the grid. So that is what this grid is suffering.
Okay.
You know, we had this Siemens deal that came in, but you know that Siemens deal is dead on arrival because there's a fight between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Power as to who will be the supervising ministry for this deal. And this is where when we talk about government, look, with the government is an entity different from us. Let's not forget that, because if you commit a crime and you go to court, it will be the government versus you. You understand? The government versus you. It will be Attorney General versus you. So if we had a responsible government, that is the kind of thing that a leader should stand up and call the two ministers to his office and say, why are you guys trying to score to a deal that was meant to increase our power generation, transmission, and distribution capacity? Because that Siemens deal promised us about 7,000 megawatts by 2021, which is last year. By 2022 now, we should have been talking about 10. By the time this government was going to go out of office, we were talking about 12,000 actually coming. We're not talking about capacity now, actual supply. But that deal has gone down the drain. Now, you did ask me a question on the energy sector, which I actually dropped the ball when I went answering questions. So let me just take some few minutes to answer your question.
Very quickly, just touch on that so we can move.
Yes, you just talked about this whole thing that petrol, diesel, everything and all of that. And I would tell Nigerians something that will shock them. The NNPC is not being honest with Nigerians about the real cause of the scarcity of petrol in Nigeria or petroleum products. The war in Ukraine is the real cause. Because the NNPC said, oh, they brought in adulterated petrol, 100 million liters, which is just about 2 days of our consumption. So 2 days of consumption of adulterated petrol wouldn't cause scarcity over 1 month. Because Russia is at war and Russia is supplying 7%, a whole 7% of global crude oil needs. Russia is now experiencing embargo by the Western world from buying crude oil from them. So refineries are not getting the kind of quantities of crude oil they needed. And so supplies are now threatened.
Okay.
There's another thing that I will tell Nigerians that will shock them. Everywhere else in the world, including the UK where I'm sitting, the governments keep what is called strategic oil reserves. So they actually keep oil both in crude and in refined form within the territory of the country for a number of months. So it's that if anything happens and they are not able to bring crude oil or refined products into the country will still continue to function. Nigeria keeps zero quantity of strategic oil reserves. We don't have any quantity of petrol now. That assuming there is a blockade, you know that COVID brought down flights. There were no more flights. Assuming there is something that a global event that happens and there is no more shipping. Do you know Nigeria will not have petrol because we don't have refineries? They are not working, and then we don't have strategic reserves of petrol. We will just be dead.
All right.
Diesel, no petrol, no aviation fuel, nothing. That is the kind of country that we are in.
All right, even as we begin to wind down in few seconds, our time is fast spent. Just as logistics companies are springing up every day, helping small business with delivery services to move goods from one place to another, will it be against any law for energy companies to spring up everywhere to deliver power or alternative sources of power without stepping on anyone's toes?
So this is one of the problems that we're having in Nigeria. We call ourselves a Federal Republic of Nigeria, but we're actually operating a unitary system. Inside the Constitution of Nigeria, the power sector is in the hands of the federal government. Why is that so? I think this constitutional change they are making, and they are trying to take that out. Because you should go to a village. If there's a river in the village, you have your mini hydro there, supplying power to that village. A state should generate its power and supply to its state. We should just have this power generating and distribution all over the country. But if you are doing more than what you need, then you inject it into the national grid. That is what is needed. So I don't think it will be a problem if this whole thing is just collapsed from the center and distributed to all parts of the country. Whoever has money to invest, generate power and supply, then go ahead and do it.
Okay.
We really need this electricity because let me tell you one thing. We think that our problem is leaders, so Minister of Finance, President, there is not even angels will come down from heaven that we develop Nigeria's economy with 3,000 megawatts of electricity. It's not going to happen. It's like you have a tractor that needs, like my co-panelist said, you have a tractor that needs 200,000 liters. And what you are dropping inside is 3,000 liters. What do you think that tractor is going to do for you? Nothing. The economy will not go anywhere.
All right. Finally, on this note, let's talk to you, Oyebode Fadipe, even taking a cue from what he just said and landed from where he landed actually. Now we see that some estates, some places are beginning to embrace renewable sources of energy. They don't even care about, they don't even know if PHCN exists or even generating set exists. So now do you see a situation where in the nearest future, a lot of people will not even know that these things exist?
No, and I think the earlier we get to that nearest future that you have mentioned, the better for us, given the embarrassingly slow pace of the development of the grid. Alternative, he brilliantly mentioned the issue of our energy mix. We are still ridiculously tied to 2 or 3 sources: hydro, thermal, and then maybe solar and all of those stuffs. I think by now we should be looking very strong. We should encourage people to do renewable energy. And I think that's one brilliant thing that the new electricity bill is considering. The spectrum of Rural Electrification Agency is being expanded to include renewable energy.
Okay.
And I think that agency must begin to do a lot of public enlightenment campaigns to draw attention to the fact that, look, we can always help you to use alternative sources. Because the fundamental difference between telecommunication companies and electricity sector is that with grid electricity, particularly using either hydro or thermal, one wire connects the other from the power station until it gets to your house. But with renewable energy, maybe solar or any other type, you just install your panels on the roof, your batteries and things. And we have a lot of solar energy in this country, particularly the northern part of this country. So we can use all of those ones. I mean, it is out of political arrogance that we want to say that, oh, my village must be on the grid. The most important thing is that you have electricity. And you guess what? In those local areas, we don't get involved in a lot of manufacturing efforts such that you need reactive power to be able to convert maybe solid to liquid, maybe like a Jaokuta steel, where you know that you need a lot of electricity to be able to melt the metal, the solid, and do whatever you want to. So I think Rural Electrification Agency and Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Agency must begin to do a lot of public enlightenment campaign. One of the things that it will do for us is that if we forgive this word, if we stubbornly refuse to grow, at least the grid, what is available now may continue to be available, but it will now free it for use in other areas of the economy. I don't know whether you get the point. So the pressure on this current availability will drop, although it is not something we should be happy about. But since we have stubbornly refused to grow and we want to go in another direction, so be it.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Oyebode Fadipe. He is a power sector consultant. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you.
Thank you very much.
And then we have joining us via Skype from UK, Nick Agule, who is an energy expert. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you.
Thank you so very much, Anna.
All right, then this is where we draw the curtain on today's program. I will definitely see you tomorrow, next time rather, because I'm sure that a lot of us have suffered electricity problem, fuel problem, even water. We just hope all of these problems will get solved anytime soon. I'll see you again next time. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless Nigeria.